Uvaženi gledalci, dobro večer. Ja sam Milica Minić, a vi premijerno na Atlas televiziji pratite ambasadorski okrugli sto. 2013. godina je na izmaku i ovo je prilika da saznamo kako naši životi i naša država izgleda iz perspektive Evropske unije, ka čijem članstvu teži, čini se nesporno, skoro pa kompletna država. Naši gosti su šef delegacije Evropske unije u Crnoj Gori Mitja Drobnic, ambasador Italije Vincenzo del Monaco i njegov slovenački kolega Vladimir Gasparic. Good evening and of course welcome to Atlas TV.
Good evening, thank you.
Sa ambasadorima ćemo razgovarati o evropskim pravilima u kontekstu pregovora o poglavljima 23-24. Govorit ćemo o životnom standardu u Crnoj Gori, a posebnu pažnju skrećem na istraživanje koje je Strategic Marketing Ipsos odradio za Atlas televiziju, u kom ste ocjenjivali rad vlade, upoređivali kućne budžete ove sa prethodnom godinom i kazali nam što očekujete 2014. A saznaćete i koliko vas smatra da su homoseksualci isti kao kriminalci koje najteže treba kažnjavati. Ipak, uvod tema broj 1, evropska pravila.
Crna Gora 18. decembra otvara poglavlja 23-24, a prema riječima glavnog pregovarača Andrije Pejovića, poziv Evropske unije pokazuje da je Brisel prepoznao rezultate Crne Gore. Ta poglavlja, koje je Brisel ranije označio kao ključna za dalji evropski put Crne Gore, odnose se na oblasti pravosuđa i vladavine prava. Ključna pitanja na koja će naša zemlja morati da odgovori su da li je država uspjela da obezbijedi nezavisnost i nepristrasnost pravosuđa, da li ima snažne institucije za efikasnu borbu protiv korupcije, koliko se poštuju ljudska prava i koliki je stepen tolerancije na različitosti.
Ambassador, since you represent the EU, I would like you to tell us, according to announcements, Montenegro is about to open negotiations on Chapter 23 and 24 that refer to judiciary and rule of law on December 18th. Experts in Montenegro frequently state that solving of specific cases will be demand of the Brussels, yet we have some opinions that the EU will require systematic resolvement of these issues. What do you think that is going to be the hardest task that is in front of Montenegro in these terms?
First, let me say that EU delegation usually speaks on behalf of other EU institutions as well, but since, including the member states, but since the representatives of the two member states are present now, I will concentrate mainly on the point of view of the European Commission. Well, rule of law is a very wide area, and it's an area with which we begin the negotiations, and it covers several sub-chapters, but this is at this moment definitely the most challenging part of the accession process. And in the framework of this general area, of course, there is also a fight against corruption and organized crime. We will follow that achievements on the basis of the so-called track record of investigations, of court procedures and so on. So this will be the indicator to what extent Montenegro has achieved the results which are promised in the action plans, and to what extent Montenegro has been successful. So in order to be able to achieve that, there was an expectation on the EU side to increase the independence of judiciary, and therefore this country or the parliament amended the constitution, and now we are in the process of appointing high officials in the judiciary and prosecution.
You keep on repeating the same suggestions that you stated right now. Do you believe that there's someone in this country who can hear you and who does hear you all way long?
I'm sure that people hear this and they are aware of that, but it's a demanding process. Especially the fight against corruption is a demanding process. It requires a certain institutional setup, but it requires also a certain political culture, and this culture is being created gradually, and it cannot be that quickly. It's even faster. The institutional setup goes faster, but this atmosphere takes much time. But I'm sure that this country has changed already in the framework of this process so far.
Ambassador Gasparic, you come from Slovenia, which joined the EU in 2004. Could you share with us your personal memories and memories regarding Slovenian accession to the EU? Right now, you're an ambassador to Montenegro, and how do you compare the situation in our country with a period while Slovenia was in this negotiation process?
Yeah, look, at that time I was ambassador to China, and it was very interesting to observe what's going on in Slovenia from that distance. But I think at that time we did a very good job. We were a very good student, if you want.
They say Montenegro is also.
But no, not that. I would like to say that later on in the process of privatization, Slovenia did some dubious decision. Privatization was very difficult in Slovenia. So maybe right now we are not doing that well. Talking about rule of law, talking about organized crime or corruption, and so actually Slovenia is right now sliding down in the rating, while Montenegro is climbing out, you know. To be more colorful, let me say the following, that in Ljubljana we have 3 or 4 very high-class restaurants. Not many people can afford to go there. And the owner of these restaurants are now complaining that they are losing customers, not only because of the crisis, but because a lot of them are in jail, so because of corruption and because of crime, economic crime.
9 years after the accession to the EU.
Right, right. So, but what I want to say is that nobody is immune to corruption. Important is to tackle this issue, to fight it. So that's what we are doing right now. But overall, the experience of Slovenia with EU is very well. We don't see any other way to act, to live, and so our story is good, I think. It's a positive story.
And if you compare it to Montenegro?
Montenegro, I believe, is doing, but my colleague Mitja knows better about that, is doing all the right moves. But, you know, Montenegro will not become a member tomorrow. It's still time to go. It's still time to adjust, to do some homework. The same is with Montenegrin hope to become a NATO member, where this target is much closer.
Slovenia is a contact point for Montenegro
regarding NATO. Yes, we are a contact point, and we believe Montenegro is on a very good way to get the invitation very soon. If anybody will get the invitation, Montenegro is the first one to get it. I don't know if next year, but if anybody, then Montenegro is the first one to get it.
Sir, you've been in Montenegro for a while now. How often do people ask you, why does the EU need Montenegro with population of 600,000 people living in this small country? I ask you this because I know, I'm Montenegrin. It is a topic among students, about children in elementary schools, a topic between our grandmothers, fathers, etc. And I don't think that anyone has ever answered this question precisely. I believe that many people who are watching you right now would like to get answer on this question.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting and very difficult question, but I will try to give an answer the easiest way possible. The magic of the negotiation of enlargements is that they realize a miracle. They update the software of societies. And Montenegrins are not immune from the fascination of an update of their societies. The same process we all went through in the past. And Europe needs Montenegro as much as Montenegro needs Europe, because it is the way we look at ourselves. because Europe is not only numbers, not only figures, it's by far much more than that. It is a community of value, it is a community of democracy, the first contributor in the war for humanitarian aid, the first economic space in the world, despite the crisis. So these are all figures that impress people because they are concrete. It's not something rhetorical, it's something very, very concrete.
Yet, but there is a belief that the European Union is a land of milk and honey.
It's not true. I mean, when you look at the daily debate within our within our countries, you realize it's never milk and honey. It's an ongoing process, and I may tell you that it's much harder once you are in than before you get in, because being part of the European Union is like, as Jacques Delors used to say, is like biking. When you stop biking, you simply fall from your bike. And we need a strong Montenegro, a mature Montenegro, because it's not only a matter of acceding the EU, it's a matter of being able to contribute to the further deepening of the European integration process. That's a secret.
So, but what do you believe that is the hardest task that is in front of Montenegro regarding this negotiation process? We've heard that on December 18th, we will open negotiations on chapters 23 and 24, and we will end negotiations with these chapters. That is a new approach in the European policy.
You know, the big challenge I see is not the capability of the country of adopting reforms, because you are already doing an excellent job. Look at the constitutional reforms of July 31st last. The key point, in my opinion, is the way Montenegro will be able to implement the reform, so that there is no gap between formal law on the one hand and material law, concrete law on the other. And that takes time. It takes even quite an amount of people working on these kinds of dossiers.
Okay, sir, I would like to ask you one more question. Lately, Montenegrin public has been preoccupied with the affair Snimak. The European Commission, in its latest report, stated that this case should be processed by the Court of Law. I would like you to tell us, how are these and similar cases resolved within the European Union? Is there any systematic approach, or it depends and varies from case to case?
Well, I don't believe that any European member state has that kind of problems or similar problems, because these countries have reached a certain level of democratic maturity before that. And I don't remember that in any recent elections that the mistrust towards the results in the elections have been expressed to that extent as it is the case in Montenegro. So I would like to connect this with the so-called political criteria in the framework of Copenhagen criteria, which says that the country should have the democratic institutions in place and should provide the evidence that these democratic institutions are working. And one of the basic elements of the democracy is our elections. They take place usually every 4 years, and they should reflect this, the sentiments and the decision of the population. That's why they are so important. That's why European Commission repeated it in the progress report, and I would not be surprised if this item remains on the agenda of the European Union and is mentioned mentioned as a principle in the next progress report as well. So it will remain this not just tape recording affair. Tape recording affair was a an element or an element that showed that there is a mistrust in the electoral process. So this mistrust, this lack of confidence should be removed. Otherwise, this lack of confidence will spoil or poison the political atmosphere in Montenegro, and the political parties, instead of concentrating on the EU affairs, on the solving the problems of the EU integration, they will deal with these problems which take a lot of time and energy.
I would like you to comment on, do you believe that issue of human rights in Montenegro should be high on the agenda, just like corruption and organized crime is? Because 23-24 includes human rights as well.
Absolutely. That's a very important issue. But on the other side, I believe that Montenegro is doing better and better. Human rights is also important in the framework of NATO. We know that NATO and EU, they share a lot of common values. And why is this so important? The important is that people act and country act and the government act on the same basis, on the same criteria. Otherwise, you cannot be team player. You cannot play with a country which has different values because they act differently, they think differently. That's why it's important to have these issues and these elements on table and try to make them better and better. If we talk about this parade, it was a great courage to organize it. For instance, Belgrade, they couldn't afford it. They were afraid to do it. But you did it. But we would hope that next time it would be, instead of 2,000 policemen and 200 participants, it would be the opposite, you know. But it's a process. It cannot be overnight. But I think you are doing the right moves.
From your perspective, does Montenegro in a right manner cope with human rights issues? We have several minorities in our country that live together without any larger problems.
You know, the fact that you raise this sensitive topic here in TV, it's already an excellent signal that the country is doing many, many efforts. And human rights always have to be on top of the agenda of any country, because that is the way we look at our society, what kind of values represent the bedrock of our countries. And this will be one of the topics which will be discussed, human rights, within the negotiations on the chapters on 23 and 24. So it's a package of the rule of law.
Hvala vam puno. Slijedi blok reklama, potom govorimo o drugoj temi, o standardu života u našoj zemlji. Podsjećanje kraj, odnosno na kanalu Status televizije, pratite premijernu emisiju Ambasadorski okrugli sto. Naši gosti su šef delegacije Evropske unije u Crnoj Gori Mitja Drobnic, ambasador Italije Vincenzo del Monaco i njegov slovenački kolega Vladimir Gasparic. Druga tema u ovoj emisiji, pitamo kad ćemo živjeti bolje.
Kada će i kako Crna Gora izaći iz ekonomske krize zavisit će od realizacije 9 velikih investicija koje vrijede 3,8 milijardi eura, a koje bi, kako je navela vlada, trebalo da budu završene u narednih 5 godina. Neke od ovih investicija su započete, poput marine Porto Montenegro i turističko-stambenih kompleksa Luštica Bej i azerbejdžanskog u Kumboru, a za neke su investitori poznati, ali se čeka završetak planova ili imovinskih sporova poput plavih horizonata i podmorskog energetskog kabla za Italiju. Naredne godine trebalo bi da počne izgradnja autoputa ka Srbiji i drugog bloka termoelektrane. Iako je ove godine Crna Gora izašla iz recesije, iako će rast BDP-a biti prema procjenama Svjetske banke 1,8%, pojedini ekonomski stručnjaci kažu da je svako domaćinstvo najveći udar krize osjetilo upravo ove godine.
U kratkom prilogu predstavili smo u najkraćem plan vlade kako da stigne do tog ekonomskog oporavka. Ambassador, how do you, from the perspective of the European Union, see this plan of the government to influence economic recovery by, on one hand, realization of the announced investments, and on the other hand, by implementing more rigorous austerity measures within the country itself? Because such plans have been debated on for some time now.
Yes, I would like to repeat what I have said at the beginning, that I will speak from the point of view of the European Commission, and you must understand, and you must understand that many decisions which the governments make are not part of the acquis. They are not a clear requirement. However, there are general elements which tackle the issue of EU integration. For example, the EU would like to receive a new candidate in a good shape, as developed as possible, who is able to compete with the general financial situation, which is in the framework of criteria. So, from this point of view, I would like to reiterate the importance of the fact that this country is out of the recession, And the austerity measures or the fiscal measures have brought some results, and the fiscal situation improved. So these are definitely steps forward on the way in the right direction. However, as far as future development is concerned, I believe that it's very important for the candidate country and for the government, and not only for the government, but everybody, all the players who are involved in the economic development, to analyze the effect of the integration on the economy. Because when you have done it, then you can design the necessary decisions. And I think that the government is doing it now, and of course it's a process. So right now maybe the government doesn't see all the necessary steps, but we know that the government is doing that gradually, and the European Commission will help the government in this process. So from this point of view, it's the government's decision what kind of decisions shall it make, whether the government will invest into a highway or into a thermal power plant. What is concern of the European Commission is the impact on the public financial situation, because at the end of this process, this country will become a part of the system, and this system does not allow the public debt to exceed a certain amount, a certain level of the GDP. So from this point of view, it's very important already at this stage what kind of decisions the government makes. And I would like to add that it is clear that services, for example, tourism and transport, will remain very important pillars of the Montenegrin economy. But I doubt that without certain development of industry, the Montenegro will be able to achieve growth which this country aspires. So a kind of more leveled development, not just services, but also industry, will be necessary to reach that goal.
New industry, or we should recover what we used to have?
Well, there is not much industry which you can rely upon. The privatization of steelworks in Nikšić seem to be on a good way to succeed. But the other industries, it has to be seen whether this can really be the base of industrial development in Montenegro. But it has to be in the framework of EU accession obligations. You would probably like to refer to CAP.
Yes.
CAP has to be dealt with in the framework of obligations stemming from the Association Stabilization Agreement. So right now already the government has the obligation to justify the public funds invested as a state aid, but in the future this company will have to operate in any form, operate in the framework of the rules on state aid.
Or it will end up by closing?
This could be, if the other solution cannot be found, but this is not on the European Commission or on the EU to tell to the government. We set a framework, rules, and the country has to stick to operate in the framework of these rules.
One of the projects announced is energy underwater cable that will connect Montenegro in Italy. Earlier, Terna announced that they are ready to commence with works, and our neighbor Croatia announced that they agree on this issue. When can we expect the start of the works on this project?
I hope as soon as possible. I don't have a precise date because that is based on technical assessment, but I'm very confident that in a matter of a month we will be able to see the opening of the works also on the Montenegrin coast. That is an incredible project because it will make Montenegro as a regional main actor in the energy field, and in a field of sustainable energy, clean energy, hydropower.
What is the experience of Italian investors here in Montenegro? What do they tell you when you talk to them? We have A2A, for example, which is in Elektroprivreda. What do they find as the most challenging obstacle in our economic system so far?
You know, it's not always, as you said before, milk and honey, but it seems to work.
We have seen.
It works. They are still here. They are investing in your country. They have other projects in your country. Terna is the most recent example because they're about to open their work, so it works. It's, as in every marriage, it's a bumpy road, but it's the final destination which matters, and I think it's successful.
Okay. Talking about economy in Montenegro without mentioning state subventions isn't possible. From agriculture to industry, which is at the verge of disappearance, rely on state subsidies. Right now, the government guarantees for loan of 272 million euros. How is this policy going to need to be changed while the accession process and eventually becoming a member state of the European Union? Since we are used to rely on state subsidies.
Look, perhaps this is more question for Mitja because it's much more technical. Well, I can say a little bit about Slovenian experience, and we are a player here as far as investment is concerned. We were the country who first came with investment to Montenegro, and all this investment a success story up to now. We are NLB is the biggest bank in Montenegro. Ločen Osiguranje is the biggest insurance company in Montenegro, and so on. So there are a number of Slovenian companies. But the problem is that somehow we don't grow anymore because of economic situation in Slovenia. All these companies in Slovenian companies here are doing very well. They are doing profits, but these profits are going back to Ljubljana, and that's the problem. We cannot grow anymore. But as far as foreign investment is concerned, I believe that Montenegro is really a regional leader right now. I envy Montenegro as Slovenian ambassador, having in mind all these announcements of potential investors or signed investment deals. This is really something which should be highly respected. And if Montenegro government with their own policy is supporting that, it's perfect. I would just express concern that all these investors, actually very few are coming from EU. They're coming from...
We've tuned to Azerbaijan.
Right, China, Turkey, Qatar, you name it, right? But probably this is connected also with transparency, the procedure, the red tape, and these kind of things. And also regarding the field of cooperation, you know, it's hard to compete in some project with Chinese from the very beginning. Because they have political will and they have ability and they have companies who can always win the bid. But we are not talking only Chinese, we are talking about also other countries. So that would be my concern. But probably transparency has something to do with bringing more EU investors into Montenegro. I think Montenegro still has a homework here to be done. And experience of Slovenian companies are the same. Sometimes we are really surprised by some move of the Montenegrin government.
For an example?
For example, by putting an extra tax on Slovenian company on a retroactivity basis, on the basis of the laws which were implemented after we start the business. So this is a sort of contradiction. We understand that government needs money, that budget is in problem, but still here the things should be done transparently. And of course we are complaining openly to this. Sometimes we are
complaining. What do they tell you? What do they tell you?
Well, depends. Sometimes we are doing well, sometimes not that well. Depends on the interest. But this is definitely not the reason for us not to stay here.
Ambassador, you wanted to...
Yes. A magic potion in economic policy does not exist. Nobody has invented it yet. So even between Keynesian and monetarist, economic policies are always a mixture of different theoretical approaches. And the same applies for Montenegro. It's not a matter of whether we can reconcile or not fiscal policies which are restrictive to respect the Maastricht parameters, and on the other hand, expensive budgetary policies to foster the economy and investment. The secret of a policymaker is the qualitative policy within the quantitative policy. So that when we decide that 100 is the total amount of money I have, where shall I put this money? And that's a difficulty we all have in our countries. And nobody can judge what Montenegro wants to do, which are the priorities Montenegro want to achieve. That is up to you. It's not up to us to decide. And I don't see a dilemma between restructuring undertakings which otherwise will go bankrupt and in giving incentives or putting the better conditions for new undertakings to come. The two policies must go together, they must work in parallel, because when I've heard this morning from the Minister of Agriculture, when you have rural farms which are in the conditions to be profitable, it's worth supporting them. When you have companies that go nowhere... To
support them how?
With the fiscal instruments that you may have according to your laws, according to your financial regulations. It's up to you, it's up to the government. The government has many tools.
Because government usually intervenes with state subsidies. That's what I'll be talking to you, hopefully.
But you know, subsidies are not forbidden per se, because even in Europe we have subsidies, but we have a regulation on state aid which says there is a white list and a black list. Subsidies that are allowed and subsidies which are not allowed. It depends on the industrial plan you have in mind, whether it is viable or not. In that case, subsidies might be authorized by the Commission.
Can we get some details regarding state subsidies in these terms? I believe that right now, what I mentioned earlier, a government guarantees loans of 272 million euros.
You are referring to CAP issue, or you are referring to general issue of subsidies? General
right now.
Well, as the colleague said, there are subsidies who are allowed, and they are part of the policies of the European Union. So if we talk about the competition rules, there are restrictions with regard to the subsidies. For a candidate country, subsidies are possible. In the metal industry, we are talking now about the metal industry. So the metal industry has to be restructured in the framework of stabilization and association agreements. This means that a country that has metal industry is supposed, if the country wishes to apply subsidies, has to present a restructuring program to the European Commission, and within this restructuring program, once the subsidy can be paid. But in the case of CAP, no restructuring program has been presented yet to the European Commission, and that is the problem. Yet. And we know that, yes, and we know that subsidies so far have been paid. So other subsidies, it depends on the area and on the purpose for which they are paid. There is a set of rules in European Union which prevents, the idea is to prevent a part of the economy to be favorized. And the
other one to be dependent on...
Exactly, and to foster the development of those sectors of the economy where European Union has advantages.
Is that something that is happening in Montenegro right now, or for several years backwards?
I don't know, I cannot be more specific, but definitely there have been some illegal some subsidies which are not in accordance with the European rules, and they will have to be tackled in the framework of EU accession of your country.
Please.
Yeah, if I may jump in.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, maybe not subsidies, but let's talk about incentives for foreign investors. Here, Montenegro, although the number of investors coming to Montenegro is going up, but it's not in industry field. In case of Montenegro, it's mainly tourism and infrastructure. But if it comes to industry, then you have a very strong competitor, for instance, in neighborhood like Serbia and Macedonia, A lot of Slovenian companies on the end, they decide to invest in Slovenia or in Macedonia or Serbia, although they have been here before and seen the situation is rather okay. But they end up in Serbia or Macedonia because of these incentives. The governments of those two countries are ready to pay for up to 5,000 euro per working place, per new working place. So if you go invest in some factory in Serbia, you will get for each working place 5,000 euro. This is something which Montenegro is not doing or maybe cannot afford to do. But this goes mainly for industrial projects. But this potentially is one setback for Montenegro.
You may have a word here.
Just one word, but to say how fascinating the European project is. Very concretely, look at the regulation on state aid. We said that not all the aids are forbidden. You will always find this struggle within the European Union between figures and solidarity. So even the regulations on state aid, they always try to reconcile the values of the European Union, social stability, workforce, labor, key priorities, and the necessities, the needs of the market, level playing field for everybody. And this makes the socio-economic model of European Union unique.
Would you like to comment on the situation in Ukraine? While you were talking about these issues, I remembered protests that are ongoing in Kiev because of the decision of Ukraine government to stop negotiation regarding stabilization within the European Union. Maybe, Mr. Drobnic, would you like to comment on this?
Well, it would be difficult to comment on the situation in the, from my point of view, in another state, but I would say that people who protest against Ukrainian government not signing the Europe agreement, they have in view a longer perspective. They believe that in long run it is in the interest of Ukraine to join European Union. It is true that in short run the candidate status or signing of such an agreement does not bring you that many benefits. It's like an investment in the future, and it's the same with the accession process. So you have to have in mind a long-term perspective, and this is, I believe, the expression of this protests. People believe that it's in their interest the integration into the EU in their long-term interest. However, the government decided maybe upon short-term interests that deal with the price of gas in short run.
Some analysts say that right now the European Union the most vividly lives in Kiev, not in Brussels, having in mind those demonstrations. We have seen European leaders visiting people demonstrating in the central square.
It's a very positive signal because there is a dialogue, and the priority is, at least from my point of view, having Ukraine associated to the European Union, being part of the same family, and having Ukraine, Kiev, with Brussels does not mean antagonizing third countries. It's simply widening the space of values and the space of prosperity.
Interests, I suppose, so at the same time, and interest.
There is always there are also economic interests, but
yes,
it's reciprocal. It's reciprocal. It's not one way. Sure.
You were talking about European values, and then I remembered Ukraine. Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to? Okay.
Yeah, with the background of Kiev, it's interesting. Right now, there's a lot of discussion in Montenegro whether Montenegro should become NATO member or not. And I think we should not focus only on this. Maybe Montenegrins should ask themselves where they see themselves in 5 or 10 years' time. Is this EU and NATO, these are closely linked organizations, or is this some other option? And there's no third option. So basically, this is an issue of strategical decision where you see yourself. And that's the point, not that much directly NATO, not NATO. Think strategically on long term, see the options which you have, and then make the decision which is most suitable for you.
Ok, idemo na još jedan blok EPP, potom ćemo da otkrijemo rezultate istraživanja koje je Ipsos Strategic Marketing uradio za Atlas televiziju. Podsjećam, ocjenjivali ste rad vlade, upoređivali porodične budžete ove i prošle godine, kazali ste nam što očekujete sljedeće, a i saznaćete koliko vas ne odvaja homoseksualce od kriminalaca koje treba najstrožije kažnjavati. Na kanalu ste Atlas televizije, pratite emisiju Ambasadorski okrugli sto. Podsjećanje, naši gosti su šef delegacije Evropske unije u Crnoj Gori Mitja Drobnic, Vincenzo del Monaco, ambasador Italije, ambasador Slovenije Vladimir Gasparic. Došli smo do treće teme, saznajte što pokazuju rezultati istraživanja koje je Ipsos Strategic Marketing uradio za Atlas televiziju.
Istraživanje koje je Ipsos Strategic Marketing na uzorku od 1000 ljudi tokom oktobra uradio za Atlas televiziju pokazalo je da 94% ispitanih smatra da bi vlada trebalo da se fokusira na ekonomiju i napređenje životnog standarda građana. 4% je ocijenilo da bi fokus trebalo da budu evropske integracije, a njih 2% je izjavilo da ne zna čime bi vlada trebalo da se bavi. Što se unapređenja standarda života tiče, 65% građana vladi je dalo ocjene 1 i 2. Izvršnoj vlasti 3 je dalo 20% ispitanih, a četvorke i petice njih 15%. Ekonomska situacija u Crnoj Gori se u posljednjih godinu pogoršala, izjavilo je 61% ispitanika. Da je ostala ista, kao lani smatra 22% ispitanih, a da se poboljšala tvrdi 15% građana. Što se sljedeće godine tiče, 38% građana smatra da će situacija još da se pogorša, dok u bolje sjutra vjeruje 34% ispitanih. Četvrtina očekuje da situacija ostane ista. Kada su posrijedi evropske integracije, peticu je vladi dalo 36% ispitanih, trojku 34%, a jedinice i dvojke dalo im je 26% ispitanih. Istraživanje je pokazalo i da skoro trećina građana smatra da homoseksualci nijesu bolji od kriminalaca i treba ih najoštrije kažnjavati. 45% nije saglasno sa takvom tvrdnjom, dok o ovoj temi mišljenje nema 27% ispitanih.
Dakle, naše građane zanima najviše životni standard. Dakle, to je tema koja je primarna svima nama koji živimo u ovoj zemlji. To je pokazalo i ovo istraživanje. Ambassador, this poll showed that 94% of the citizens believe that the government should be devoted to the development of the country's economy, and only 4% believes that European integration should be essential. I would like you to tell us, to explain us, if the improvement of standard of living isn't an European value, then what is it then?
You are absolutely right. If you read the Lisbon Treaty, one of the first article stipulations will explain to you that the reason for the European integration is to create a better conditions for economic and social development of particular countries, better conditions together than alone. So it's a false dilemma. By solving issues with relation to European integration, the government is creating better conditions for economic and social development of this country. Of course, we should not reduce European Union to the issue of money. It would be wrong. European Union was created, let us remind ourselves, as a peace project after the Second World War, and although we have forgotten it, it is still very, very valid. But in the recent years, the economic and social issues are coming to the forefront. So by solving issues of EU integration, the government is creating in the future, maybe not immediately, but in the future, definitely better conditions for economic and social development. However, I would like to add that membership in the European Union is not a gift that you get without giving anything instead. European Union membership brings opportunities, and I say it very often when I talk to the Montenegrin public, and I'm sure that this country is able to use these new opportunities, and through using them create better living conditions and better conditions for their children, for themselves, and also for their children.
While expecting the concrete results of the EU integration, citizens admit their living standard is even more deteriorating. Are their expectations regarding the EU integrations justified?
You know, I think that these are irrational answers which were given, with all my respect. And maybe it's a lesson for all of us, and even for the media, if you allow me, because
yes,
we always have a narrative which is focused on chapters 23 and 24. Even in theater, there is a comedy which is on article 23, chapters 23 and 24. That's not all about European Union. There is much more about that. That is a step. It's a tremendous step, very important, crucial. We'll go through that. But Europe is much more. Let me make an example, very concrete for the audience. Imagine that Montenegro or Italy or Germany or the UK alone facing the challenges of globalization. No chance. We need to stay together. European integration was an option maybe 40 years ago. It is a necessity nowadays. Let me make you a second example. We are working for a transatlantic renaissance, which means that we are negotiating, the member states, the European Commission and the United States, a new transatlantic trade and investment partnership. The transatlantic relation in the economic field gave something like 14 million jobs. These are figures. And if we manage, as I hope, to conclude quickly this free trade agreement, which is ambitious and deep and comprehensive, we'll be able to double these figures. This is the European Union.
Who should take responsibility for results of this poll? I mean, we have 94 against 4% economy versus EU integrations, and we have heard that it is the same.
Well, first of all, I believe this is misunderstanding or not enough understanding of what's going on. Namely,
yet we are talking about people. People were giving those answers.
Yes, but it's not the idea to become member of EU just for the sake of EU. The idea is that in the process you improve your country from the legal point of view, social, economical, political, that you can achieve very good economic results. Without this you cannot. Without with the corruption, organized crime, you cannot achieve good economic results. Sooner or later such country would collapse. So it's misunderstanding of conception, what's first and what's second. So EU negotiation process is definitely leading to the better economy, but it's not only about economy and money, what Mitja said, right? So basically, I believe that the people who were answering this question didn't know exactly the perception of it, or the answer, the question was maybe not put well enough.
Okay, but how dangerous is the fact that 1/3 of the citizens believe that homosexuals are not better than criminals, and they should be punished severely only because of their sexual preferences? While I was reading these polls, it was the information that shocked me as a journalist and as a citizen the most.
Well, this is not good, definitely. And this is something that this country will have to work on in the framework of these two famous chapters, 23, 24, if we speak about the chapters. But it's not only about the chapters, it's about the treatment of minorities. Let's not forget, it's not only about homosexuals, it's about minorities. And if we want to project the European values into this country, what we are trying, and if this country will accept these values, then this should change. And I think it demonstrates that this country is at the beginning of in some processes. On the other hand, there are processes, there are other areas where this country has demonstrated a lot of protection of values. For example, let me remind that in the framework of the Balkan wars, this country accepted a lot of refugees. So it's not it's not the situation where Montenegrins would be not compassionate, intolerant. It's maybe some areas which have to be further developed.
Ambassador, you?
I was shocked. Not much to add. It's really shocking answers. It's only 1,000 people that responded to your question. So I really hope that they do not represent the 30% of the Montenegrins. I see this country as a very generous country, a very open country, a very bright people. So I can't believe that 30% think that homosexuals or minorities should be punished as a criminal. So
you, Ambassador?
Yeah, I share opinion. I think this is embarrassing if it is true. But I don't believe it's true, because as Mitja said, your history shows quite different behavior and understanding of the people. During all these Balkan troubles, you were safe haven. You were taking refugees. At a certain moment, I think 1/5 of population were refugees. Yes. And you fed them and you housed them and they survived. Well, you want human rights and you want high levels of social acceptance and high levels of humanity. That is not this. So I think this is not a very good result.
And I think that we should add that your government did an excellent job during the parade, because the way police forces, the security was managed, organized, well thought, it was absolutely impeccable.
People who attended Pride Parade stated that was the moment when they were feeling the most, the safest ever since they were born.
And if I may,
considering the fact, the amount of policemen who were
and
around.
That was a signal to all of us, to EU and NATO, that government decided to do it and protect the people, and it was done. And that's a very strong message. Positive message.
Positive message. For the end, I would like to get some concrete messages, maybe conclusions, having in mind that 2013 is up to its end. We have a new year, new tasks in front all of us. The government, the citizens, I suppose, you three as well.
Well, the message would be, let us continue together this process of EU integration, not just negotiations, because it's actually the EU integration. You do not negotiate on the European acquis. And in the next year, we end it together this year with good results. Some results will hopefully follow by the end of this month. Some of the job, some of the processes remained unfinished. And here I would like to stress the work of the working group on re-establishment of trust into electoral process. This has to be continued. It's very important. And the opening of chapters 23, 24 will open the way to other chapters, to other fields of negotiations. And this will give the government and other interest groups to the opportunity to confront themselves with other areas of integration and prepare for full membership gradually also in these areas.
Yes, sir.
We should keep on doing our homework all together very seriously. Lots of priorities, the problem of how to decline the big reforms into ordinary laws. It's very burdensome, but that really makes this country make a leap forward very, very, very concretely. And in 6 months' time, Italy is going to hold the rotating presidency of the EU, and that will be another important challenge for us to try to push the agenda forward and keep on working together with Montenegro. We want Montenegrins within the EU. That's our common objective, and we believe that this is the destiny of all the Western Balkan region.
Slovenia.
Yeah, as a NATO contact embassy, I wish, and believe me, we also work very hard on that, that Montenegro would be accepted to NATO September next year. It's not finished discussion whether this will be already on agenda or not, But I would like to say that Montenegro is doing very well, that achievements which could be done in last year are remarkable, that you are basically ready. But it's political decision. You can be 100% ready, and if decision is that this is not enlargement summit, there will be no enlargement. But on all 4 pillars of which are important for NATO, you're doing very well. This is rule of law, and rule of law is not, NATO is not about Article 23, 24. It's wider. Then in reform of armed forces, establishment of military intelligence services is very well. The biggest deficit is in public support.
We'll talk
public
about
support is lagging behind quite remarkably, but you still have time, and what is even more important, you are showing now more intention and more will to work on that, and that's a positive.
In January, we'll talk about NATO and especially about that public support. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uvaženi gledalci, premijerno ste pratili na našoj televiziji ambasadorski okrugli sto. Ja sam Milica Mirnić, zahvaljujem na pažnji i pozivam vas da ostanete uz program Atlas televizije. Do gledanja.